Like and subscribe right now, or else this will be in your bed tonight. r/AskReddit by Planet Reddit. Ex-cons of Reddit who have served long-term sentences, 10 plus years. What was the biggest and most shocking changes you witnessed after being released? Buddy of mine was in 10 years. 2003 he was sentenced and just released a couple of months back. Biggest changes he noticed were cell phones and the internet. There was no Facebook at the time and the cell phones were crappy, Sony Ericsson anyone. He spent days on Facebook using a friend's touchscreen phone and looking at porn. Never seen a guy so happy in my life. That first porn would be a delight to behold again. We truly live in the golden age of masturbation. My uncle was in prison from 2002 to 2012 and absolutely lost his shit when he saw an iPhone for the first time. So did everyone at the Apple convention when they were released. Seriously, did you hear the collective gasp when he pinches on a photo and it zooms in as if being manipulated by his hand? All jokes aside though, most people take it for granted today, but the iPhone was some revolutionary shit. The change in pubic hair trends. This was about 10 years ago when I heard this. But a co-worker once mentioned that he went away for 15 years. When he got out, the first thing he noticed and freaked out about was the lack of pubic hair on women. He felt really uncomfortable having sex with them because he felt like he was having sex with prepubescent girls. Man, no one is winning in the comments below yours. As a guy, I have no clue what I'm supposed to do with my pubes. My one ex liked it completely shaved. But the girls I work with now all have different opinions on it. The time that went by. How old and grey my parents were. How I was basically dead to everyone on the outside world. How I had no friends except the people I met in prison. No job. No one wanting to hire me. Who wants to hire an ex-con? Once a con. Always a con in the eyes of society. I'm just a shell of a person. Don't give up hope, buddy. Hang in there. Don't tell that to Brooks. How much more expensive everything is in relation to minimum wage and the increasing property tax. In the 2000s it was much harder to get by than it was in the 1990s. But comparatively it's a smaller gap than the difference in 2000s to 2010 so far. Also the price of pizza is awesome. It's been right about the same price for like 20 years. After 10 years in prison, he noticed the comparative prices. This man has his priorities straight. He could kick us at that now then game on The Price is Right if nothing else. I dunno. Sounds like something worked for this dude. On another note, Dead Zed. I died. That was a great read. I can't imagine how out of touch you'd feel if you came out now with all the technology we have now after entering prison when TV was considered a privileged item. My dad was in prison for 11 years. One of the first things he did after getting out was ruin my grandma's microwave cooking a can of soup in it. I'm sure he had better stories too. But that's the only one that comes to mind. Edit. In case microwaving a tin can wouldn't do anything. My dad is a notorious tall talker. Rest assured. That would thoroughly duck up a microwave. 14 years here. It's not so much the changes as it is your view of an insight into human behavior. You can see human behavior with such clarity. Having learned to read people for survival. Having said that, the most shocking thing I experienced was people's unwillingness to look at themselves and refusal to look at reality. People out here have the luxury of building constructs that permit themselves to evade critical analysis of their own lives and failures. They refuse to accept government oppression for what it is. Finding solace in television and other alternate forms of reality. It is very Matrix-like out here. You just described the premise of Fahrenheit 451. I was thinking 1984. I noticed how heroin has destroyed where I grew up. Everyone I know. And everyone I grew up with. I would say you got lucky with that. Prison before being a junkie any day. I was walking one day to the store and this guy calls me over whilst he sat in his car bumping Tupac, looks at my feet and asks me, is that the new style? People wearing small socks? I was wearing ankle socks. Tell him yes, he tells me he just came out of prison after 11 years. This was around 2010. What are long socks in comparison to ankle socks? Did everyone wear knee socks? Or are ankle socks to you? Trainer socks to me? My brother-in-law did 6 years. There were lots of time travel type weirdness. But the funniest was his new GF was talking on her house phone and needed to text a friend on her cell phone. While also putting on makeup. She hands the cell to my Bill and says text her back for me. He stares at it for like 5 minutes before tapping her on the shoulder and says I have no idea what I am doing. With all these police shows showing criminals going to jail, I have always thought a good idea for a television show would be how these ex-cons readjust into society. For example, how technology, vehicles, and even society has changed. One day every aspect of life will be exploited on TV so executives can make millions of dollars. Not me, but a girl that I work with. She spent 7 years in prison. She said that when she was picked up from prison, her parents stopped at a gas station. She spent forever looking at all the products that she had never seen before. While she was in, the energy drink craze began and she had no idea what those big, colorful cans were. Plus all these funky flavored potato chips that have came out. I bet the first taste of one of those energy drinks was disappointing. If this thread doesn't attract any people that meet your criteria, I'd just like to announce that at one point I was locked in a closet for 3 hours. Just saying. Did you come out of the closet? Holy shit. Kanye is a Redditor. Relevant. Please help spread this around. That is the most official looking document I have seen to date. Genuine question. How old is that list? I know in Australia, the airlines had problems when they introduced new security ID laws. Because a bunch of the baggage handlers and other ramp people failed the new background checks. I'd imagine post 9/11 might have the same issues. Got on a bus to Nick, 4 hours trip, and the guy who sat next to me literally just got out of prison after roughly 10 years, attempted manslaughter. Before he went to prison there was no Facebook, smartphones, or iPods. He only knew of MySpace. When I got out of prison I looked forward to logging into my MySpace account so bad. I was very heartbroken when I learned Facebook had taken everything over. Haha, but seriously though. And that was only after 2 years. I couldn't imagine 10. Same thing happened to me in Seattle. The guy was dressed in atypical late 90s gangbang clothes. Dude just got out of jail. Got drunk on $20. Was sitting in the bus. Talking to people who weren't interested. For my brother it was the internet and cell phones. He came out in 2006 and was like, what the duck is MySpace? He wanted to get this thing called a beeper too. My brother lived with me when he got out of prison about 4 years ago. He served 2.5 years, not exactly long term I know. But his life before incarceration was pretty grim too it seemed. My family lived in quite a nice home during the time he stayed with us. One of the first things he noticed was the amount of food we kept in our house, which seemed to steadily increase to satisfy his desires. We went to Costco, where he had not been before, and he was astonished by the low prices and quantity. I had a bright pink laptop at the time, and I helped him set up an email. Got a smartphone, eventually, and was astonished by the power he could hold in one hand. R.I.P. Corey. May I ask what happened to Corey? He passed away of a drug overdose about 6 months ago due to the same drugs he was doing before he went to prison. Rehab did not serve him well sadly. 10 years later and still no StarCraft 2. I knew a guy who always stood at a urinal leaning with his hand pressed against the wall. Because in prison if you stand there with both hands on your dong someone will shove your face into the wall, knock you out and rape you. I also heard that prisoners take off their pants completely when they shit. So they could fight without getting their legs trapped in their pants down on their knees. Scary. Shit. Then they were doing it right. The correct use for using the toilet is to take off your pants and face the wall so that you can use that handy little table. A few years ago, I accompanied my stepfather to pick up his brother who had been in jail since the mid-70s. He asked us to stop at the first gas station he saw. And looking around the biggest mindfuck he had was they sell soda in 3 liters? Oh my ducking god. I can drink 1.5 3 liters in one container? WHO the duck thought of this? This is duckine jive. Still using 70s lingo. He's sadly now back in jail for doing the same thing he did to go back in the first place. He was a cool dude. But some people just don't change. Printers still don't ducking work. Hahaha, thank you. Just made my morning. As my IT guy tries to figure out why I can't seem to print multiple invoices at a time. Oh. And I work at a technology company. I live in a town that has a federal and state prison in upstate NY. I would ride the bus to go see my girlfriend at the time. I would leave to go see her on the weekends and ride the bus down to the city. With all the inmates that just got out of from doing their time. So you get on the bus and everyone would have the same white shirt, khaki pants, velcro shoes and brown bag. If you ever pulled out your cell phone they would all ask to make a call on it. But they had no idea how to dial the number, so I would have to do it for them. That got old really fast. On one ride someone had a smartphone pulling up all the hit rap song from the last few years. It was funny how far behind they were. Some of them did have little clear plastic radios with earbuds. I don't think they worked all that well, and my hometown doesn't have any hip hop stations, so they were out of luck. The bus would also stop at a small store to pick up food. And they would go nuts just getting everything they had been missing out on. I assume candy, soda, cigarettes, sext. They were all really happy to just be out. I think they talked a lot about what they were going to when they got home as well. When my brother gets out in 10 years, I'll let ya know. P. What happened with Legos? They used to be simple. Oh come on. I know you know what I'm talking about. Legos were simple. Something happened out here while I was inside. Harry Potter Legos. Star Wars Legos. Complicated kits. Tiny little blocks. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad. I just wanna know what happened. I don't think these guys get the reference. We're just streets ahead is all. I worked in a music store and had a guy come in who had just been released. He had no idea what an MP3 player was or even the concept of it. It was an quite interesting discussion with him, teaching him the ins and outs of the internet and how to get music. Maybe you could tell us a bit more? I know everyone hates the not a convict but type answers, but as a non-convict I recently witnessed a guy at McDonald's who had just finished an 8-year stint who was completely blown away by the automatic drink dispenser at the drive-thru window. There was a little assembly line thing where the cups dropped down into a loop which would move in a circuit then stop to be filled. Without any apparent intervention by an operator. It mesmerized him. I had to think about this because surely one day I walked into McDonald's and it was there. When the last time it wasn't. I never noticed the introduction of it. Why didn't that surprise me just as much the first time I saw it? Do I just ignore things that aren't important enough until they become normal? From that day, I have tried to always look at things with fresh eyes. To see if there's anything else I've been missing. I'm not a convict. But as an Australian that would also freak the duck out of me. I'm not a convict. But as an Australian. Bit of a contradiction there, don't you think? FWIW, my girlfriend's dad thought cell phones had a dial tone when he got out. He went back shortly after. Debit cards. I was watching this show, I think it was True Life, about people getting released after a long sentence. One guy's sister handed him her cell phone, this way WAAAY before iPhones. 2, and the look on his face was just, he looked completely overwhelmed. She had to walk him through everything. Keep in mind that this guy was only in his mid to late 30s. I'm afraid I can't find a link. But some bloke who served 10 years for bank robbery did an excellent Ask Me Anything on r/morbid reality a few months back. If you can find it, I would recommend reading it. Probably my favorite Ask Me Anything of all time. You are a lazy mother ducker. I threw Ask Me Anything into the morbid reality search. Look what's on top. The very first result. Link to the Ask Me Anything in question. Sorry mate. I searched served 10 years and other such keywords with no avail. Guess I was being too specific. Thanks for the links. Not 10 years. Just 2006 to 2008. But in that time the price of an average lunch jumped from about $5 to $7. Also Crocs. Those had me baffled. Not just you, Crocs baffled a lot of people. How fast things move on the outside. I saw an automobile once when I was a kid. But now they're everywhere. The world went and got itself in a big damn hurry. Luckily the parole board was able to get me into this halfway house. They called it the Brewer. And they got me a job bagging groceries at the Footway. It's hard work for an old guy like me, but I try and keep up, but my hands hurt real bad most of the time. I don't think the manager likes me very much. Sometimes after work, I go to the park and feed the birds. I used to have a bird in prison, called him Jake, and I know it's unlikely, but I keep thinking, maybe someday he'll stop by and say hello. He never does though. Hopefully wherever he is, he's doing okay and making some friends. I often have trouble sleeping at night and have bad dreams where I'm falling. I'll wake up scared as can be and it takes me a while to remember where I'm at after waking. Some people have told me to go to a therapist, but I know I can't afford it. Maybe I should get me a gun and rob the Footway so they'd send me back to prison. I feel like I belong there now. I could even shoot the manager while I was at it. Sort of like a bonus. I guess I'm too old for that sort of nonsense anymore. I don't like it here. I'm tired of being afraid all the time. I've decided not to stay. I doubt they'll kick up any fuss. Not for an old crook like me. I'll likely go unnoticed. Man, that scene broke my heart. Everything. The different perspective his words put on today's world. His doomed loneliness and cruel rejection from society. When he hung himself, I lost it. I loved his character. Open bracket. I felt bad his best friend Bird left him. I was in juvie prison from Jan 96 to November 99, from 16-19, and have a brother who won't get his first parole hearing until 2027, all the way from 1996. Edit. I did a small ammo on another thread about solitary confinement, but you can ammo me if you want. Only thing I ask is to not ask for the original crime that landed me in there. Couple questions about that's for this. Do they let you have a watch in solitary? I heard if you have an understanding of time it can keep you sane longer. How long were you in solitary for? Do they really call it the hole, or is it just in the movies? What was the hardest part about it all? I'll ask anyways. What was the original crime that landed you in there? Osama bin Laden is dead, we have a black president. You would think they would hear about those things. Not me. But I have a friend who served time for second-degree homicide. But after his release, he cleaned up his life and is now a lawyer. I'll ask him to post on here tomorrow if either of us get a chance and he's interested. That's intense. As a law student, I know people who are afraid of not being able to sit for the bar because they have some disorderly conduct or something similar on their record. Some people get denied initially for excessive speeding tickets. Maybe it depends on the state. My dad is getting out after 5 years in about a week. Was thinking of asking him to do an Ask Me Anything. Is this a bad idea? Of course not. But don't force him. After reading some of the responses, I'm beginning to think if I have felt anything as good as the freedom these ex-cons have felt upon being released. My brother was passed out drunk in the backseat of a car. His friends decided to rob a gas station. Even though the outside video showed that he was out, he had even thrown up all over himself. He was there, and in Texas if you are there you are an accessory. The next day when he found out what his friends had done, he beat the hell out of them and then turned himself in. He got 5 years, which is the minimum in Texas. The judge went easy the other two. One got 14 and the other got 15 years. Anyway, he went into prison in 1997 and got out in 2002. These are a few changes he talked about that were odd or big to him. When he got out, the zip code of where my parents had lived had changed. He tattooed the old zip code on his stomach, so that was funny. When he went in, computers cost over $1,000 for a middle of the road one, and only a few people had cell phones. They all had Pagas. When he got out everyone was starting to get them. Gas was 2.50 and up gallon, and when he went in it was about $1. People were ultra paranoid because of 9/11. That was one of the biggest changes. He said the whole world went crazy with anti-Muslim stupidity, meaning how stupid people were being anti-Muslims just because some of them are fanatical a-holes. There were more. I have tried to get him on Reddit, so maybe he will get on and post. In for 4 years. Smartphones. WTF. Honestly. What the duck? Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.